Hi guys, it's Faye from Solar Flow and I am back with an all new video. Today's topic is a deep dive behind the veil energy read on a man named Matt Lauer. Now Matt Lauer was an NBC News anchor for at least 20 years. He was also a co-host and he had a long and illustrious career in TV broadcasting news up until 1997 when he was let go because there was allegations of sexual impropriety on his part. So first and foremost, even though you guys had not requested I look into him, and certainly nobody had requested that I do a video on him, because in the last AMA when I was running out of time, I was kind of juggling who I thought I could fit in, and I was like, I don't know if I could fit him in. Let me know if you want me to do a video on him. Nobody did. So you might then be wondering why I'm doing a video on him anyway. Here's why. Because we are not just wanting to be flies on the wall, right? We're not just peeling back the three-dimensional veil and looking into people's energy. What we are actually doing here is, in addition to looking at people's energy, we're peeling back that 3D veil and we are investigating what are the soul, spiritual, or energetic functions that are comprising the 3D world that we see around us. And for Matt Lauer, what came in on an energetic level is so completely in line with so many of the things that we have talked about that I was like, he's a perfect representation to further discuss how the energy of a person and the energies that are around them comprise the reality. So I hope that you guys will stick around for this video, and if not, I will definitely catch you at another one. Now, for anybody that is perhaps from another country, or if you are not familiar with who Matt Lauer is, I have some three-dimensional information that came right off of his Wikipedia page. And I'm going to share that first. Then I'm going to get into the behind the veil energy read on Matt Lauer. Then we're going to talk about the bigger societal takeaways at the end. So Matt Lauer, I believe he's about 56 years old now, and he is an American former television news personality, best known for NBC News and for being an anchor for The Today Show, as well as a co-host for The Today Show from 1997 until 2017. Now, Matt Lauer first got into TV broadcasting, I want to say in the early 1980s. So he has definitely been in TV broadcasting for a number of decades. He worked his way up the ladder, he paid his dues, and then the last 20 years of his life, he was the co-anchor for The Today Show. Now, why am I really driving this point home? This has a lot to do with who he actually is behind the veil. Now, in addition to being a co-host and an anchor for NBC News, he also hosted the annual Thanksgiving Day Parade, and he also co-hosted the opening ceremonies for the Olympics. Now, let's dive in and let's talk a little bit about what Matt's energy had shared with me. So first and foremost, as soon as I had connected to his energy, his front door was shown to me as being a rotating door. What is a rotating door? It's when the door closes, it opens back up again. And then when it closes, it opens back up again. This was more a metaphorical explanation for who he is, because Matt Lauer is very much the quintessential playboy. And why was his door a rotating one? Because when one woman had left his apartment, that door would open right the fuck back up again, and another woman would walk right in. It probably wasn't literally the door closed and it would open. It is just, again, a representation of the fact that this is a man that enjoyed women's company. So this is the first piece of information that I want to bring to you as we're going to start to build out the character analysis and the energetic investigation of who Matt Lauer is. Quintessential playboy, had a rotating front door. And why? Because when he had first started out at NBC, he still had a full head of hair. Now, in his later years, he did start to go bald, and then he shaved his head a la Bruce Willis. But when he was younger, very, very handsome young man. Full head of beautiful hair, beautiful olive skin tone. He was on his way to being quite successful, well-to-do. He was obviously very articulate if he was in broadcasting news. Good-looking man. And he had a fair amount of game. He was attractive, successful, and he was completely emotionally unavailable. Now, how do we know this? Don't just take my word for it. Rotating door, y'all. A man cannot be invested in one woman if he is having sexual relations with a host of other people. He's opening himself up too much energetically. Very emotionally unavailable. And here's the thing. This was a very potent blend to a certain kind of a woman, right? And what's this potent blend? Articulate, well-spoken, attractive, completely emotionally unavailable. And this was a potent blend to a certain kind of woman, and there were plenty of women that were crazy for him. Now, you might be wondering, what kind of woman do I speak of? This is perhaps a woman that has, it could first and foremost, it could be a woman that's also emotionally unavailable, right? It could be like a friends with benefits kind of a thing. He's attractive, he's good company, neither of us are looking for anything serious, c'est la vie. But for another kind of a woman, this is also a very, very potent kind of a blend, because this might be a woman that is somebody that has self-worth issues. And being with a man like this is going to, on the one hand, it's going to be good for her ego, because it's going to be like, well, look, such an attractive man is interested in me. But on the other hand, this is a man that's completely emotionally unavailable. So it's going to actually reinforce this kind of particular woman's beliefs that she may have about herself, which may have to do with her self-worth. He's not committed to me. He's not invested in me. It must be me. I'm not good enough. It's not that it's him. He's not the problem. It's me. I must be the problem. So there were, first and foremost, plenty of women in New York City at that time that either were working on their own career and didn't have time for a serious relationship. They were happy to be friends with benefits, or there were certain kind of a women that were happy to be his maybe sometimes side kind of chick deal. Now, what was also shown to me is at this time, he was slowly and steadily gaining traction and working his way up. And at some point in his career, he had kind of been tapped, and they were kind of like looking at the long-term prognosis for him. He's good looking, he's hardworking, he's been here for a while. And then they start to kind of like look at the analytics. They were looking at like the key demographics, right? So what's the key demographic that is tuning into Matt Lauer? When he's on air, what do we know about who is tuning in? And there's a certain kind of a demographic that was most tuned in and most interested in him. And this is like, I would say probably like the coveted 35 to 44-year-old age bracket. And it was like, you know, the middle-aged married women were most tuning into him. So at some point he was tapped and a conversation was had with him where it was said, like, we could see you being here for a long time. We could see you doing great things at NBC News. But here's the thing. Your key demo is growing up, and we want you to grow up with them. So in the next couple of years, we need you to get married. And why? Because they wanted to make him even more attractive and more candidate to the key demographic base that was loyal to him. So it was kind of like, they've grown up, we want you to grow up too. You need to get married so your image is going to be more grounded, more stable, and like you are growing up with your key demo audience. And it was also said to him that because they could see great things with him, it was more than just an innuendo. It wasn't like, well, if you get married, you can have a promotion. It was like, we're going to already start to put key elements into place that are going to line you up for this promotion. But just like we are lining these things up for you, you got to line things up as well. Your audience wants to see you grow up. And here's the thing. You might be, first and foremost, Matt Lauer is not the marrying kind of a man. So what was shown to me about him is that he kind of fancied himself to be like George Clooney. George Clooney was a bachelor until, I think, even in his 50s. And he was always showing up on the red carpet with beautiful young women. And then one day, in his 50s, he finally decides that he's going to get married, he's going to settle down, and he's going to have kids. So Matt Lauer very much fancied himself to be kind of like a George Clooney, where he would almost forever be a bachelor until he was going to get to a certain age, maybe like now, in his 50s, where he wasn't going to be quite as attractive as he was going to be in his youth, or in his 30s certainly. And then he would decide to settle down and get married, and he would marry a much younger woman that was going to be like arm candy. That was the way in which Matt Lauer had envisioned his life playing out. So then you might be wondering, if he really wasn't the marrying type and he was enjoying his bachelorhood and he was enjoying the rotating door that was his front door, why in fact did he get married? Now this is where the second component of building out the character assessment of who Matt Lauer comes into play. He may not have been the marrying kind of a man, but he was a success-oriented kind of a man. And the way he viewed marriage was, this is a ring on the ladder that I am climbing to my ultimate success. He was success-oriented through and through. So he didn't view marriage as a sacred relationship that he was going to be getting into with one person, where they were going to be building things together and growing together. He looked at it like a ring on the ladder of success. So good-looking, emotionally unavailable man who was willing to settle down and get married, even though it was something that he didn't see for himself, because it meant that he was going to be more successful. Okay, let's explore more. Now, because the success was assured to him, he did actually decide to settle down, and he chose a woman that he thought would be best suited to his career and also would look nice and be presentable at events while standing together. So he had chosen a former model by the name of Annette Roque to get married. And I want to say, I think I had read that they had gotten married in like 1999. And this is a lot about him. He first and foremost married a former model. So it's an attractive woman. She's tall, she presents well, she probably had contacts in fashion houses. So if they were going to work events, she could always look very, very well presented. She knew how to probably do her hair and her makeup. Again, a tall, attractive woman. He chose her for those qualifications and for those specifications. And again, this is because he was not looking at going into marriage as if I'm going to be building something with her. It was, I just need somebody that's going to complement my appearance at work events. Maybe this is going to give you an idea into the kind of relationship that these two actually had. If not, don't worry, I'm going to tell you about it. Now, similarly, so here's also the thing about Annette Roque. I do not believe that she is actually American. I think she might be like Dutch or Norwegian or something like that. And what was shown to me about her is, first and foremost, she didn't necessarily love him as well. She was shown to me as somebody that had slightly fractured energy, where she didn't fully know herself and she didn't fully understand herself, and she wasn't fully comfortable in her own skin. And here's why. She was not living in her country. It was not her native language. She was not surrounded by people that she had perhaps grown up with and known her entire life. So she was kind of like a fish out of water a little bit. Now, we're not giving her a pass. We're not being like, okay, she was young, she was naive, she didn't know any better, she didn't speak his language, therefore she got into a bad marriage with him. Because it was not a good marriage. It's more to say that what was going on behind the veil with her is that she was not fully embodied in her own self. And because she was not fully empowered, she was making decisions in a disempowered state. And what's more is that even while they were in their courtship, he was already stepping out on the side. What does stepping out mean? He was already cheating on her. Because again, this is a man that is emotionally unavailable. He's a man that enjoyed his freedom, and he enjoyed having the company of various different women on an ongoing basis. Monkey vining from one woman to another woman so he wouldn't have to slow down and stop and actually look at himself. It didn't really stop when he was in a committed relationship or an so-called exclusive relationship with Annette, and it didn't stop after they got married either. So now you might be wondering, if Annette already knew about him stepping out on the side before they were married, why did she choose to marry him? And this is where I'm going to go back to what I had just said a moment ago about not making a decision being in the fullest expression of her own personal power. And in addition to that, what was shown to me is that her friends, and when this came in, I was like, she needs better friends. But that's, 2% personal opinion. But what her friends were actually counseling and advising her was as such. This is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of a guy that she's going to get. He's a good catch, right? Like he's a fish. She caught a good one. Don't throw that fish back into the sea. You best keep that fish. But I don't like this kind of, it doesn't matter. It's a good fish. Keep it. So she was being counseled by her friends to first and foremost stay with him because this is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of a guy that you're going to get. So image conscience as well. This is Matt Lauer. What do you mean you're going to break up with Matt Lauer? Well, he's cheating on me. That's all going to end when you get married. Don't worry about it. Stay with him. And yes, this is what she was told by her friends, that he was, you guys aren't married. It's going to be different when you get married. Don't worry about it. He's going to stop stepping out on the side. He's got to get it out of his system now before you guys get married. So for anyone who doesn't yet know, if a guy is not faithful to you before you get married, he's not going to be faithful after. Because people don't just wake up one morning and be like, I think I'm going to cheat on my spouse today. There's a pattern. There's a history. There's some sort of an energetic blueprint that is comprising that kind of a behavior. And that was certainly the case for Matt Lauer. Just because he was stepping out before, and even though her friends were saying it would all change after he got married, it didn't. He continued to step out on the side. But they still decided to get married. And why? She presented perfectly nice when she was on his arm at events. She was going to be a good-looking woman. She was a good-looking woman. She was going to look good, and this was going to continue to build out his kind of the profile of how he wanted to be perceived. He didn't just marry a beautiful woman, he married a former model. Why did she marry him? She liked the idea of him. So to be clear, neither of these two actually loved one another. He did not love her. She did not love him. She knew that he was cheating on her, and she decided to marry him anyway because she was not fully embodied. And he married her for very, very shallow and superficial reasons. Maybe you can understand the kind of relationship that these two actually then therefore had. He didn't go into it thinking, I'm building something with this woman. I'm going to be faithful to her. I'm going to love, honor, cherish, and obey her. Or even sometimes put her needs before my own. He didn't look at it that way. She was a ring in the ladder to his ultimate success. And what was also shown to me is even though it had worked for the time being, or it had initially worked because he was tapering his extracurricular sexual dalliances when they had first gotten married. He gave it, and I know it sounds funny to say it this way, in earnest, he gave it like nine months to a year before he started stepping out. He's like, okay, the honeymoon period is over. I gave her a good 9 months of my life. And why? Because Matt was not the marrying kind. And he felt incredibly stifled. And he did cheat on an ongoing basis for the duration of their marriage. And Annette knew about it. She caught him. Not every time. Maybe she was catching him every third time, every fourth time that he was having an affair. She was still catching it. And because she was benefiting off of his success at NBC News, she knew better than to blow it up and to make a fuss. She might have been catching it. She might have even been making comments to him, but those comments died with her. And here's also the notable thing that had come in when looking into this, which is to say that he was still getting caught. Now, what does that show? It's not like maybe the first time he cheated, he got caught, and then he was like, you know what, it wasn't like a come to Jesus moment for him. It wasn't like, you know what, I gotta make a choice. Am I gonna commit to my wife and am I gonna stop this? Or am I gonna decide not to commit to my wife? And I'm gonna decide to commit to having these extramarital affairs. I'm just gonna get better at concealing them so she doesn't actually know about it. What did he actually choose to do? He decided to continue to commit to the extramarital affairs. Real life, y'all. He decided to commit to those extramarital affairs, but he wasn't getting any better at concealing it. Why? This is another piece in the puzzle of building out who Matt Lauer is. He wasn't getting better at concealing it because he didn't care. He had no need to conceal it because he knew, first and foremost, she wasn't going to leave him. Second of all, he didn't genuinely care about her feelings. He did not care if she knew. He did not care how that made her feel. Emotionally unavailable. Didn't go into the marriage looking at it like this was a sacred matrimony. It was the commingling of two souls coming together. It was none of that. It was like, oh, I got to marry her so I can have a better career. Okay, whatever, fine. There was nothing sacred about their union. Not from his perspective, not from her perspective. So these are two people that went into this union with very three-dimensional, surface level intentions. And therefore, what was the output of the union was two people that didn't take the union very seriously. Now, again, she was catching him maybe every third time that he was having an affair. And again, he was not doing anything to conceal it because he didn't care if she knew. He actually wanted to hurt her. Now, how do we know this? What had actually come out when I looked at his Wikipedia page was as follows, and this is very interesting. So when Annette was pregnant with their third child in 2006, she had filed for divorce due to the following reasons, quote, mental abuse, extreme mental and emotional distress, humiliation, torment, and anxiety. Now, what's notable, there's a couple of things notable about this in my perspective. First and foremost is, look at it this way. Before they got married, she knew he was cheating on her. After they got married, she was still catching him cheating on her. She kept it concealed for a number of years and didn't say anything about it. And then in 2006, she came out with this banger. And why? This was at the point where this was her come to Jesus moment. I'm pregnant with our third child, and he is still cheating. And not only is he cheating on her, he's not concealing it because that is showing he wanted her to know. So if he wanted her to catch him and he wanted her to know, Is it then such a far stretch of the imagination to say that he was mentally abusing her? That there was extreme mental and emotional distress. He was also humiliating her by stepping out on her. And he was tormenting her, and there was a great amount of anxiety in the union between the two of them. So this was not where she was coming out saying, I'm gonna fucking implode your career if you don't stop cheating on me. It was like, what the actual fuck, Matt? We're about to have our third child, and this is still going on. Not only is it going on, it's getting worse. This was her come to Jesus moment, and in her wanting to really drive home to him the importance of him changing for the betterment of this relationship. Now, what was the end result of this is a few weeks later, they actually did reconcile. Okay. Did anything change? No. He put on a good show of making it appear as if he was going to be a changed man. Was he really a changed man? No. And we're going to get to that. So they did reconcile just a few short weeks later. I think I had read it was something like 6 weeks later. And then they did separate in 2017, and they did ultimately get divorced in 2019. Now, at this time, what was shown to me with Matt is that while they were married, he was stepping out on the side, and it was also shown to me that they would also be at work events, or they would be at functions or like charity events or something like that, where Matt would be drinking and he would be flirting with other women while Annette was actually standing at his side. And this is what she would do. She was looking the other way. She was either literally looking the other way, or she would take a sip of her champagne, or she would take a compact out and she would start looking at her makeup, or she would excuse herself and she would go to the bathroom, or she would take the napkin that she had in her hand and she would start dabbing at her makeup. She was distracting herself from what he was actually doing at that time. And interestingly enough, she did not know the full extent of what was going on, because she had committed, even prior to them getting married, when she knew that he was cheating, and she would always forgive him and take him back, she had kind of like reinforced in herself this idea that she was going to look the other way. So she didn't really understand the full breadth and scope of what he was actually doing. Yes, he was humiliating her. He was cheating on her. Yes, he was flirting with other women while she was standing with him while they were at like some sort of a function or an event. But she would always look the other way because she was benefiting off of his career. Another way of saying this is that she was actually an enabler. Now, what had actually started to happen after 2006, when she had filed for divorce, and here's also the thing. You file for fucking divorce and you're not putting down something like irreconcilable differences, but you're putting down, what did she put down? Mental abuse, extreme mental and emotional distress, humiliation, torment, and anxiety. She is basically indicating she will not go quietly into the night. Not at this point, not any longer. She was going to, at some point, drag his name through the mud in New York. She was probably going to be leaking things to like the press about him, right? She was not going quietly into the night. So at this time, Matt realized he wasn't having this moment where it's like, oh fuck, like I really need to commit to my wife. It was like, oh fuck, I just better get better at hiding from her that I'm cheating on her. So what had actually happened at that time was that Matt would make a point of walking, I'm not sure what it's called, like it was kind of shown to me as this big open space, and there's a lot of these different like cubicles, and there's interns that are working there, and there's maybe like low-level news people, or maybe like it's the researchers, or it's the people that are like scheduling guests or things like that, right? So he would make a point of walking through this big open expanse where there's cubicles, and some of the, cubicles to me are like they suck the life force out of people, because they're like partitions that are dividing people from other people. And some of them are quite tall that you would need to stand up to actually like look over at a person next to you. Some of them are a bit lower down where you could be seated and you can see the person that's like sitting next to you. So he didn't like to go, I don't want any hard work. So he wasn't gonna go to like the tall cubicles where he was gonna have to walk like it's through a maze and like, look, who can I talk to? He would like to go to the section where there was like the low cubicles, where maybe like the interns had sat, and he would, even though he probably like had a coffee machine in his own office, he liked to go to the kitchen, the like office kitchenette, and he would get himself like a cup of coffee. Why? It was an excuse for him to walk through this area where the low cubicles were, where he could see where everybody was sitting, and he would make a point of saying, oh, who's new? And then with a cup of coffee in his hand, he would just casually stroll back through, and he would stop and he would talk to the interns, and he'd be like, oh, you're new. Hi, I'm Matt. What's your name? What made you want to get into broadcasting? What brings you here? What university did you just graduate from? And this now became his new favorite fishing location. He was gonna fish for young, impressionable, and attractive young women in his office. And what was actually shown to me is, as I had said at the beginning of the video, that his apartment door or his front door was like a rotating door. At this time, his office door was shown to me as being like a rotating door. And his, I don't know if it was like his secretary or his assistant, there was somebody, like an older woman that was sitting outside of his office, and every time like a young intern would go in, she would do this. Everyone knew what he was doing. It was a big open secret that he was casting his fishing net into the office at where he worked. Now, why was he also doing this? Because it was also shown to me that he, first and foremost, absolutely hated to go home. They had 3 little kids at home now. He already felt stifled when he first got married, when they didn't have any kids in the house. Now he felt like stifled to the max. His house was noisy, his house was dirty, his wife didn't give him enough attention anymore. So he would find any excuse to stay at work late and to walk up and down the corridors and find pretty young, little, attractive interns that he could flirt with. Now, interestingly enough, what was also shown to me about Matt Lauer at this time was he had developed, one might call it a lifestyle problem. What was that lifestyle problem? He was drinking too much Coca-Cola. But he liked the caffeine-free version of Coca-Cola. So it was the kind that would amp you up. Because caffeine in Coca-Cola makes people quite energetic. And in addition to that, he couldn't go on air after drinking Coca-Cola, being too amped up. So he had to balance that out, and he had to take something that would bring him down a little bit. Like, he liked the feeling of mental acuity and the energy that he would get from the Coca-Cola, but he also couldn't go on air that way. So his office turned into a bit of a pharmacy. He had the Coca-Cola, and he had the other things that he was taking that was balancing him out. And then because he hated going home, and he would find any reason to stay at work late, after he had gotten off the air, he also had a mini bar in his office, and he was either drinking scotch or like whiskey or something like that. Now, here's the thing. As I have shared in some of my older videos, and I'll link it down below if you want to go back and watch it. When a person is engaging in certainly alcohol, but also recreational drugs, that is opening them up energetically. So they are no longer even going to be showing up as themselves. And here's also the thing, because his office had now become a rotating door, he was also picking up a lot of energy tags of the other women as well. So he was going to become rather energetically compromised. And being energetically compromised is going to change the decisions that a person is going to make, because first and foremost, they are lowering their vibration through the recreational drugs and through the alcohol that they are drinking. And it wasn't like he was like a social drinker where he would drink once a week. He was drinking every day. When he got off air, he was drinking the Coca-Cola. He was taking other things to balance himself out. This is then all going to lower his vibration. Plus he's taking on all of those energy tags. He's going to start to show up differently. Now, this is also not me giving him a pass. I'm not being like, well, he was overrun, it wasn't him. No, because we are all responsible for our own personal energetic blueprint. And because he was not discerning with his own energetic blueprint through all of the various things that he was doing, he was then allowing himself to be an energetic match for other energetic things that perhaps would be attracted to and drawn to him. We're going to explore more of this, but it's just to also say that this is one of the explanations why, even though he was stepping out on his wife for the entire duration of the marriage, and even though he now looked at his workplace as a new fishing ground for him to go fishing in, his behavior also started to change. Where now he was not just having the rotating door to his office where he had these pretty young little interns that were coming in and he was having their fun with them. What were some things that were actually starting to come out at this time? What was the other big open secret of what was going on? And that is that because he had lowered himself energetically, he was now behaving in a more aggressive way, where there were accusations of him behaving, or a better way of saying it is him engaging in non-consensual sexual activities with other women. It's a word that I cannot say, but it's non-consensual sex. So this is to explain to you what was causing the change in him, where it wasn't like he wasn't getting sex. He was getting more sex than he could probably even handle. So what then led him to behave in such a way where he was engaging in non-consensual sex with women? It was because of how he was treating his body and how that was compromising his own energy and what he was then a vibrational match for, and how he was choosing to behave when he was in a lower, more compromised energetic state. It led to non-consensual sex. This was the other open secret that was going on at NBC News. Now, this is an open secret of what was going on, right? What precipitated this? Now, this is what was shown to me. Because he had plenty of women, younger women, that were willing to come to his office and have sexual dalliances with him. He was very, very cocky. He had an overinflated sense of self, where he began to believe that every woman therefore would be interested in him and may have already had been interested in him. So why not just cut to the chase and just invite them to do things with me? So what had actually happened, or at least what was shown to me, and I believe this is the event that had actually happened in at the Olympics, because it was shown to me as happening. He had made a comment about being in a hotel room to one of his coworkers. And what he had basically said was, and this is more than him just misreading the situation. This is, again, really having an overinflated sense of self-identity. And what he had, and also the way he had said it left no room for interpretation. It wasn't like, that was a little vague. Was he hitting on me? I'm not quite sure. He came right the fuck out with guns a-blazing, and he had basically insinuated to her that he would like to see her in his hotel room later naked. You can't misconstrue that. He was basically saying, come to my hotel room later so I can fuck you. So this is where he is treating his coworkers. This is someone that he has an ongoing relationship with. He's worked with them for years, but he is now treating these people as nothing more than sexual objects. They're not even human beings to him. It's a fucking sexual object for him to have his gratification with. Now, what had also then happened is there were additional allegations of impropriety. But when some of these allegations had come out, this is shocking, what had actually happened is that one of the women had said they had had one non-consensual sexual encounter, and then thereafter she decided to have a consensual sexual relationship with him. We're going to talk about this. This is the bigger takeaway at the end. This is just like a little teaser of it. But while there were these allegations of sexual impropriety, it was a big open secret at NBC. Now, NBC would have been willing to just pay these women to shut them up and have them walk away. He's worth more than whoever they are. Name your monetary amount for the pain and suffering that you have endured. Name it, we'll give it to you. Because whatever it is, he's gonna bring us more money than that. So we don't care. It's almost like it's a business expense, so to say. So what was then the kicking point where they were like, oh shit, we actually have to fire him? And that is because even though there were all of these allegations of sexual impropriety and non-consensual sex, NBC had stated that they were aware that both the New York Times and Variety magazine were running independent investigations into Matt Lauer and into the allegations of the sexual impropriety. So they actually didn't care that this was all going on, or who this was happening with, or how these people were being wounded. They cared that they were not going to be able to control the narrative any longer, and that this was going to get away from them. And this is exactly what had happened with Harvey Weinstein, where it was a big open secret in Hollywood. Everybody knew what was going on. Everyone knew what was going on in Hollywood, that he was getting a hotel room. Like, if you're really interested in meeting with a starlet, why are you doing it in a fucking hotel room? Have them come to your office, or meet with them, like, take them out to fucking lunch. It was happening in his hotel room, and it was a big open secret because these young girls would go there hoping he would cast them into a film, and then they would get to his room and he would sexually assault them, or he would engage in non-consensual sex with them. Big open secret. What was the tipping point with Harvey Weinstein? It was when it was hemorrhaging, and they could no longer put a lid on this. It was, imagine if you will, you take a seltzer bottle and you shake it up, and then you start to slowly twist the cap open. It's gonna start to fizz out all over the place. You're gonna have to quickly close it right back up. With Harvey Weinstein, it was like that cap had been screwed open too much. There was no way to close the bottle back up again. It was too big, it was too massive, it was too much of a story. Everybody knew about it all along, and they were perfectly okay with it. They only stopped being okay with it when it was a story that could no longer be contained, like the seltzer no longer being contained in the seltzer bottle. Same exact thing with Matt Lauer. Same exact thing with Matt Lauer. NBC knew about it and didn't care about it. They only started to care about it when they were losing control of the narrative, and they were like, well, fuck. Either the New York Times or Variety magazine, one of them are going to print the story first, and then we can't control it any longer. And that was what necessitated Matt Lauer coming out and making statements. I think I had read it was something to the effect of, not all of the allegations against me are true, but enough of them are true that I feel ashamed for my actions. And then NBC fired him for cause. but we're not done yet. So let me pick up my notes. Now, let's talk a little bit about Matt Lauer and what happened with Annette, and then we're going to talk about the big fucking takeaway for all of society in this. So first and foremost, what was shown to me was that they had actually been separated prior to the story breaking free of what he had been doing, the sexual impropriety and the non-consensual sex. They were actually separated prior to that. However, the story coming out was really the impetus in Annette actually filing for divorce. And they had been living apart. Okay. Now, what was also shown to me about her is that she's not particularly happy, even though they're divorced. And I think I had read that he lives in Manhattan and she lives in the Hamptons. They have older kids now. I think like their youngest was born in 2006. So their youngest is about, my math is not great. So 2006, 2016, 10, I don't know, something around 17, right? So let's say they have like a 17-year-old, a 19-year-old, and like a 21-year-old. All right, so she's got older kids. She lives in the Hamptons, and she is now divorced from him. Now, it was shown to me she's not particularly happy, and she feels that she gave the best years of her life to him. Now, this is also a woman who is older. So she might have been a little bit on the younger side when she married him. She was not fully embodied. She didn't really know herself well. She didn't have access to all parts of herself. Now she does. And she's drawn all those pieces together to look at him like, I can't believe I gave this guy the best years of my life. She's happy for her kids. She's happy that she had kids. She's happy for her home and for the accumulation of things that Matt's success had provided to her, but she's not genuinely happy. And she's also not happy with him, for him, or at him. All of these different variations had come in, which I think is very interesting. And what was also shown to me is that when they speak about their kids, she speaks in a very clipped tone. Maybe she's giving one-word answers. Yes, no, okay, I'll see you there. Very, very clipped tone, and she does not stay on the phone with him for a moment longer than she needs to. Now, what was shown to me about Matt Lauer is he's not particularly happy either. He feels like he had lived his life in reverse. He had married too young, and he had had kids too young. So whereas now at 56, he feels like this was the time that he should have gotten married. This is the time that he should have started to have kids. So he lived his life in reverse. He also feels he had reached the pinnacle of his... This is such a justification. He feels he reached the pinnacle of his career too soon. Because why? Now he's in his 50s, he doesn't have a fucking career. So the way he's viewing it through the lens of his reality is, I reached it too soon and now I don't have a career. With no understanding of the fact that the reason he doesn't have a career at this point is because of his own behavior and his own actions and what he had actually done to women. No level of insight on his part. So he had reached the pinnacle of his career too soon, and his so-called golden years are not so golden. And he feels that because of his age and his lack of actual success at this time, he is forced to be more mature. Now he's being more mature. He's being forced to be more mature and to have actual girlfriends because his door is no longer a rotating door. And without having actual girlfriends in his life, loneliness has ensued on him. Now let's talk about this bigger societal takeaway, because this is wild what had come in. And yes, it's me who's saying it's wild, and it's me who had channeled the information. I can say that. But also, it's fucking wild. And here's why. So, do you know how a few minutes ago I was talking about the fact that even though Matt Lauer had no trouble getting laid, His office door was a rotating door. He could cheat on the side with a net, right? He had been doing it the entirety of their actual marriage. What was the contributing factor to his behavior changing, where he was now, it wasn't just good enough for him to have young girls that were coming to his office that he was having dalliances with? What was the tipping point? It was because of his lifestyle choices that he was making, drinking the Coca-Cola, taking other things, prescriptive medication that was being used for fun, coupled with the alcohol, was opening him up, and it was changing him energetically. And what did that actually start to look like? Where he was making really, really poor choices because he was an energetic match with poor choices. And how was it manifesting for him? Sexual impropriety and non-consensual sex with actual people he knew, actual coworkers, not even seeing them as human beings. They were just sexual objects to him. As if that wasn't bad enough, this to me is the wildest thing. That the woman that he had actually, one of the women at least, that he had actually had, or I think I had read this was more than one, at least one, if not more of the women that he had first had non-consensual sex with, later agreed to have a consensual sexual relationship with him. And why? Because they had stated the reason they did it is they were concerned he would stand in their way of them achieving success in broadcasting. So they were looking at him like he was the gatekeeper, if you will, of their actual ultimate success. And they decided to engage in consensual sexual relationships with him, even though the first encounter had been non-consensual. Now, why is this notable? First and foremost, this is an indication of how broken a society we live in is. That women would decide to have a consensual sexual relationship with him after being sexually violated by him because they thought he could negatively impact their career if they didn't. So imagine being so fully enmeshed in the three-dimensional that you would choose to, not you, people would choose to debate themselves for the sake of their career because you were so, or they were so concerned that if they didn't, it would have a negative effect on their career. And they looked at it as if they could not then have both. They couldn't have an intact sense of self and a career. It was one or the other. So they were viewing it or perceiving it that they had to abdicate having an intact sense of self so that they could have the career because they couldn't have both. So based on the way this information had come in, I'm going to say that these women were probably disassociating from themselves when they were having sexual relations with him, so-called consensually. Intact sense of self indicates that they were not intact in themselves when they were engaging in sexual relations with him. Now, this is more than just a Matt Lauer issue. This is more than just a Me Too issue, because Matt Lauer very, very much reminds me of Harvey Weinstein. This is a bigwig. This is someone that earns a lot of fucking money. Everybody look the other way for those people. So this is bigger than a Matt Lauer issue. This is bigger than a Harvey Weinstein issue. This is bigger than a Me Too issue. Because of what Matt Lauer actually represents. That he was the perception of being the gatekeeper to someone's success in the three-dimensional world, and that then allowed him to behave abhorrently because of it. Being employed by NBC that knew full well about it, and they were enablers. So he's not really any different than Harvey Weinstein, is he? Because Harvey Weinstein is another man that operated out of a sense of entitlement, but at least and this is not to diminish in any way, shape, or form what Harvey Weinstein had actually done. But here's the thing. Harvey Weinstein had taken liberties with women that were going to his hotel room. But some of them actually were cast into movies. And it's horrible to say that, because I bet you anything in the world, those women would be like, I'd rather fucking not have that fucking film I was cast in for this to not have happened to me. There's no amount of money that can compensate for a person having endured something this egregious towards them. And this is actually harkens back to what Rose McGowan had said in the last AMA. And I'll link that down below if you haven't seen it either. She was basically saying, when people were coming forward and they were bringing up these allegations of abuse done by Harvey Weinstein, they were just paying it out. It was like a fucking business expense to them. And that reinforces this idea in the three-dimensional world that money is the Band-Aid that fixes all problems. Money's not a fucking Band-Aid. It's an assessment of some value, some monetary value that is going to put a Band-Aid on what someone has endured and what's been done to them. Matt Lauer is not any better than a Harvey Weinstein. NBC is no better than everybody in Hollywood that knew what was going on in these hotel rooms and did nothing about it. And if this isn't sorted enough, what was going on behind the veil? Matt Lauer was creating energetic micro tears to the energetic field and the energetic body of all of these women. Engaging in non-consensual sex is a massive violation, and it is hugely traumatizing. And that then creates micro tears into those women's energy. Their energetic field, their aura, their energetic bodies, micro tears. So he was creating micro tears through the emotional and physical damage that he was causing towards them. And why was he doing it? Because he was damaged. And as the saying goes, hurt people, so too do damaged people damage people. And damaged people damage people. Because if you want to know who somebody is, look at the world around them. Because like attracts like. Right? So while Matt Lauer seemingly had success in the 3D world, but behind the scenes, he was abusive, certainly towards his wife, which certainly would also mean probably towards his children as well. He was sexually abusive at work. So he was damaging scores of other women. And this is very much a reflection of who he is. Damaged, energetically compromised, on a lower vibration, and therefore he caused damage because of his low vibration, and was what then? An energetic match for low vibrations. Like attracts like, as I always say. The example I always give and will continue to give is with crystals. Imagine, if you will, both of these crystals, although they be different, are turned to the same polarity. They are thus then an energetic match for one another. And what happens? When they come towards one another, they are attracted to one another and they connect. But let's say one of them is turned to a different polarity. They are now no longer on the same vibration. So when this one comes in, this one is now no longer going to come together and be connected. It's repelled. This one comes in, this one goes away. This comes in, this one goes away. And on it goes until you turn this one back and then they come together again. This is what a reflection of vibrational alignment looks like. You want to know who somebody is, you look at their life. Wait, there's more. Now, the reason that Matt Lauer had his 3D success, this is also wild, is because he is a lower energetic being, and therefore he was an energetic match for the 3D, which also included the sexual abuse. Because why? He is someone that's energetically stuck in his root chakra. Now, what are our chakras? It's kind of like they're meridian points that run from the base of our spine to the top of our head. And ideally what you would want, or what anybody would want as we're ascending, is for all of our chakras to be opened and aligned, so that way we can bring our energy up and connect to the divine. Matt Lauer is a perfect example of somebody that was stuck in his root chakra. Why? What does the root chakra represent? Survival. And what are some indications of survival? It's the survival of the species, or it's the survival of your own lineage, which is then procreation. So he was stuck in his root chakra, which would monitor base 3D needs such as procreation. But here's the thing. Evolutionary, men don't go around wanting to have a lot of sex, or not just men, anyone. Anyone that is stuck in their root chakra is not going around because they are wanting to procreate. They're not having a lot of sex because they want to necessarily have a lot of kids. So evolutionary, the need for procreation is still there. However, it's without the need to actually bring forth a new generation into the world. So how does it show up? The need to procreate is there. How does that show up in modern day terms? The need to engage in sexual relations on this scale for Matt Lauer indicates that his energy was stuck in the root chakra. Again, before he got married, his door was a rotating door. After he got married, he was stepping out on a net. When there was a come to Jesus moment and it was like, no, Matt, you gotta fucking stop this, he just pivoted. And then he would go fishing in his office. And then, because he had been opening himself up so much all along for all of that time, and he was so energetically compromised because of the lifestyle changes that he was engaging in, it changed him fundamentally, and it made him become more violent, where the sex no longer was enough. Now it had to be about the power and the control and the non-consensual element of it. He was stuck in his root chakra. He wasn't having a lot of sex because, he wanted to have a lot of sex, obviously, but it wasn't like he was having a lot of sex because he wanted to have kids, because evolutionary, yes, that's why people get stuck there. But you're in 2023 right now. Now when people are engaging this way and showing up this way, it is because they are stuck in their root chakra, which is what? It is all about survival. And what do we do to survive? You eat, you sleep, you procreate. No one's procreating to have kids now in 2023. They're procreating because they're stuck in their root chakra, which is all about survival. Similarly, too, he was a vibrational match for other women that were also stuck in their root chakra and stuck in all about survival. Because, oh my fucking God, if I don't have a consensual sexual relationship with this man after he already sexually violated me, my career's over. So they were stuck in the base 3D needs as well. So he was a vibrational match for the woman that he was engaging in sexual relationships with. And he was also a vibrational match for the woman that he was actually having non-consensual sex with. He's the gatekeeper to their fucking career success. If they don't now sleep with him after he had already violated them, and some of them he violated horrifically, they thought their career was going to be over. They were stuck in their base three-dimensional survival as well. Therefore, they were an energetic match with him. Now, here's another way of looking at it, because like attracts like. So, had he encountered women that were maybe not climbing their own ladders to their ultimate version of what success looked like for them, he would not be an energetic match for them, and this would not have happened. Or if he would have encountered a woman and he was not an energetic match, then that might have been somebody that he would have had like a one night kind of dalliance with. They were not an energetic match for anything longer or anything more than that. Or their paths would not have crossed at all. How many women was he macking on in his workplace? Did all of them go to his office, or did only some of them go to his office? And why might that be the case? Who was he an energetic match for? So the reason that I found this so notable and that I wanted to talk about it is an indication, first and foremost, because again, nothing happens in the 3D world that does not have either a soul, spiritual, or energetic meaning behind it. Now, for some of these women that Matt Lauer maybe had a non-consensual sexual relationship with, it was some sort of a soul contract that those two had prior to incarnating into this life. This was some sort of an agreement between the two of them, that this was going to play out. Maybe not for all of them. Because he was stuck in his root chakra. Therefore, he was what? An energetic match for other women that were stuck in their root chakra. And that's why like attracting like had brought them together. So as always, guys, I am sharing this with the hopes that it is going to be insightful or maybe thought-provoking. And as always, please take what resonates and leave the rest behind. And as always, and until next time, stay in the high vibration. Because like attracts like. So the higher vibration that we are in any given time, the more higher vibration people, experiences, fortuitous events, we are then going to be a vibrational match for as well. So stay in the high vibration.